bag number 4. We are ready to continue with Jerry's apartment. This has been a really fun little build so far, and it's a very brisk build. It's certainly not as big as something like Pirates of Barracuda Bay, so it's kind of funny just how fast the thing is coming together. I'm used to doing tiny little steps on something and it not being obvious that you're making any progress for forever. So it's a nice change of pace to be able to see major progress with every new bag. So it's a lot of fun so far, though. Bringing back all kinds of good little Seinfeld member berries. All right. Get my pieces sorted out, bring the model a little closer so I can maybe do a little better. All right. And Kramer passed out. Okay. So the very first thing that we're going to be doing is, I think this bag is more about building out the little like side office area of Jerry's apartment, which, you know, I've been rewatching the show from the early parts of it. So I'm actually on season 3. So it's kind of early days, the first half of Seinfeld. And that's an area of the apartment in the early episodes that isn't really exploited that much. Like I'm not even sure they had it like quite figured out at that point. Maybe it is there and I'm not paying very much attention to it. But it's funny because as the 90s went on, you know, that became more of a thing, like a little office, little home office, little computer room. It became much more of a common thing. So I've always thought that was just them kind of updating it as it went. And as I talked about in one of the previous parts, there's definitely a feeling in the show that they kind of, you know, changed a few little things about Jerry's apartment around, but never anything too major. It stayed, I think it still had its core. It was never like, hey, here's a remodel of Jerry's apartment. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it great? No, never anything quite that frivolous. Seinfeld was never a show where something like that was going to be a thing. Besides, it's cheaper to keep it the same, right? So every single time I build a Lego set that has a chair in it, there's always like, there's something different that they do about building chairs. It's just a thing at this point. I think it's just like, there's never ever going to be like a consistent way that chairs are made in Lego sets. It's going to be different every single time. It's almost like, it's a lot like what they do with trees. It seems like there's always something different about trees in every Lego set. There's never like this one consistent end-all be-all way to create the trees. All right, so we're going to angle this a little bit. And I believe that the intention is you just hook one of the legs onto that little tab right there. I said tab. I meant to say stud. Lego stud. All right, and this is going to be the first little window that we build. You know, windows, there's something that, you know, it's a little different for each set. There's a little bit of a design theory difference depending on what you're building. But it's not like Jerry's apartment is full of windows or anything, so it's not going to be a major feature of this set. I don't think most apartments, if you were living in that area, would have a ton of windows. But who knows? I've never lived there. Okay. So that just goes in like the back of the home office. And now we're going to be kind of lining the walls a little bit. And we're essentially just kind of matching these kind of rectangles to the tops of the gray. And just trying to make sure you get your stud counts right. This bag is mostly white pieces. And that's something that this set I'm noticing is really big on, is it's organizing pretty much one type of piece or one type of brick for each step. It seems like you'll get a bag. Oh, well, here's the gray bag and here's the white bag. And, I like that because I'm a color separating kind of person, like the way I think about things. Visually, it always has a lot to do with color. So whoever kind of laid this out was probably thinking about it the same way that I would, I guess. Okay. Have a little tripod action right there. I accidentally lifted the tripod with my knee. So if it looks like there's an earthquake at Jerry's apartment, just don't mind me. I'm trying to remember which window it was that Kramer kept shouting out. I think it's season 2, and challenging Newman to throw himself out the window. And what's really funny is they didn't have Wayne Knight cast as him yet, so instead of Wayne Knight's voice, it's just Larry David shouting something, like as a fill-in. My brother told me that in later airings, they had Wayne Knight go back and redub that. But I think the ones that you see on Netflix are the actual, like, air versions, which I think is very important. I want it to be as it was originally seen. I mean, it's cool that they went back and, did something to fix continuity, but would that be considered Seinfeld special edition? Are we to that point now with Seinfeld? Has it become like the Star Wars movies? There's a special edition and there's a regular. Maybe. Yeah, I guess we're to that point. It does kind of, feel that same sort of cultural significance, though, because not, of course, Star Wars revolutionized the technical kind of side of filmmaking. And I think Seinfeld is more about revolutionizing tastes and humor a little bit, or at least exposing people to a different kind of style of humor that previously hadn't had much exposure. I bet there's so many comedy writers and people that had unsuccessful bids for sitcoms that probably watched Seinfeld and absolutely slapped themselves in the face, because here it was, the most successful comedy up to that point on TV, utilizing ideas that no one, I think, that were so obvious that I think they were too obvious to be thought of, which goes back to the whole concept of the show about nothing. That's kind of the magic of it, though. It's just some of these concepts, like the episode I rewatched it the other night, about them being stuck at the Chinese restaurant. James Hong is the concierge. And that's just the whole episode. It's just about them being stuck. That is so just dirt obvious to do. And it at first, you pitch something like that and it seems like it wouldn't be a good episode of TV at all. But it's actually brilliant. So it's just I don't think, because I was a early 90s kid, late 80s kid, and I didn't realize just how many failed sitcoms that there were during that time period. I really didn't get it. To me, I had felt like I had just been born into TGIF on ABC. I was born and there was Full House and there was Family Matters and there was Step by Step, and to me, it just seemed like it had always been there, and sitcoms were always successful and they were always a big thing. But what I didn't understand was there was that whole period of the late '80s with people desperately trying to crack the code in the mid '80s too, with all these writers all trying every conceivable sitcom trope like imaginable, and most of them just falling completely flat. And sometime, if you get a chance, I would suggest that anybody goes back and you watch these crazy video compilations on YouTube where it's just forgotten sitcoms of the '80s, and you will be treated, and I guess treated is a weird word to use. You will be subjected, how about that? You'll be subjected to the most random, like completely out there, brain dead sitcom concepts you can imagine from every network in a never ending war to have the best sitcom ratings during the early to mid '80s. And it is just wild, the stuff that you'll see. Of course, when I was a kid, I definitely had some favorite sitcoms that I don't know if they were like super successful. I guess they were though, yeah. But there was some that had kind of like passed me by that weren't around very much when I was a kid. But I loved watching the reruns of them, like Small Wonder. I don't know if anybody who's watching this would remember Small Wonder. It was about the little robot girl, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head. But I didn't call the show Small Wonder and didn't even know the show was called Small Wonder because keep in mind I was like 3 or something watching this. Instead, I called it by the name of the little robot girl. That was just what I called the show, and I can't remember her name for the life of me. But that was what the show was, and I loved it. I guess it was, a kid would absolutely go crazy over something like a show about a robot girl. And that's the funny part is sitcoms kind of became a little more, they were appealing to a slightly older audience by the end of the '90s. But before that, there was all kinds of experimentation with goofier kinds of sitcoms. And that was just a part of it. So here we have the actual air unit, I guess. I guess this is the window unit right here. So this is a funny little thing to put in there. Let's see. So we actually put that in the window. Yep. There we go. And the great part is that this is totally removable to where if you wanted to, you could just take the unit out and you could just close the window up. So you can have it either be Jerry's summertime apartment or Jerry's winter apartment. So I appreciate that kind of funny little bit of customization. You don't always get that with sets. You can winterize your Jerry's apartment set. Another show I really loved was Mr. Belvedere. It might have been because my mom liked it, and so we were watching reruns, maybe based on that. It's about the butler. I really liked that show, but I think it was well and truly pretty well just done by the time I was born, or it was ending or something, because I remember that it not being around very much. You see, there's another one too that I really liked when I was a kid. My older sister, she's quite a bit older than me, but she really liked Punky Brewster. Like, that was a big thing for her. At least I think it was. To this day, I never really watched that much Punky Brewster. I really couldn't tell you much about the show. I sort of know, like, I could recognize the kid. But that's it. I could recognize Punky. That's about it. I don't know a whole lot about what that show was like. I'm sure it's fun though. Seinfeld, even though it occupies a really high position when it comes to shows that I love, another show that occupies a really, really high standing position for me is The Jeffersons. For some reason, the humor of The Jeffersons always clicked with me, like, immediately. And that is an old sitcom that I absolutely love. And it was thanks to it being shown in reruns on TV Land and all that. And when I was a kid, I think really grown my love of that show. But the truth is, and I might be one of the only people that can say this, is I was not introduced to Sherman Hemsley that way, like the Jeffersons. I don't think I'd ever watched the Jeffersons until they started putting it in reruns and all that on TV Land. I don't think I even knew it existed or even knew what it was. Instead, I was introduced to Sherman Hemsley through that show Amen. And they still show it on some of like the local satellite feeds around here, like some of the different network secondary feeds. But I really liked that show when I was a kid, and Mom really liked the show too. So I was always gravitating towards whatever Mom watched, and that always made a big difference to me. If she liked it, I usually liked it. Which, case in point, is how a 3 or 4 year old kid was frequently watching like Murphy Brown and thinking that was great. And you know what? I'd say Murphy Brown was great. I don't know. It's been too many years since I've seen it. Also, Mom really liked Designing Women. I remember watching a lot of Designing Women with Mom, which was that's a fun show. I've seen it in reruns a little bit, years and years later. I like Designing Women. Seeing it now, I understand that, look at this, it's an actual printed piece. Why couldn't they have all been printed pieces? Come on, Lego. But seeing it now, I don't know. I think Designing Women ends up reminding me more of Golden Girls, like a younger Golden Girls. Speaking of Golden Girls, I mean, rest in peace, Betty White. It's so sad to hear that, but man, Betty had she had a fantastic run. You can't say that she didn't do everything. She didn't have a full life, I guess, because she did. It was an incredibly full life, and God bless her. She brought a lot of people a lot of joy, including me. I'm a big Mary Tyler Moore Show fan, so her segments on the Mary Tyler Moore Show were just fantastic, and she was great, but it wasn't until I got older that I was watching the show and sort of realized what the intention was with her character. I think when I was a kid, I just thought that in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Betty White was just supposed to be super nice. But then as I got a little bit older, I realized that the joke was that she's like the happy homemaker person on a network show that's actually like a nightmare to work with. And you gotta love that trope. And I think that was using Betty White to her fullest potential, too, because that was always her shtick. Or, later in her career, it was definitely her shtick that she was, super sweet and then all of a sudden outrageous or, super salty or something like that. And that always worked for whatever reason for her. And I think it was just her. Her sweet appearance. I think that along with her wit, that combined was just dynamite. And I think any TV writer would see that and be like, oh, we've got to do something with that. Let's have her say a bad word. That'll be funny. And sure enough, that got a laugh every time. She's Betty White, says a bad word. Instant comedy. It's not that easy for most people. Most people these days, they say a bad word. Oh, it's another Joe Schmo on TV who's cursing. There's something hilarious about Betty White doing that. I kind of came to the Golden Girls a little late, I think, compared to most people who enjoy the show. For me, it was much later. I don't know why that was, but it wasn't as readily available in reruns when I was a kid, so I guess I didn't see as much of Golden Girls, but I have all the respect for Golden Girls, I really do. Wonderful show. TBS was an excellent source of reruns when I was really little. And looking back, the network really wasn't that old come, early 90s, late 80s when I was first watching it. And I think it was on TBS that they were rerunning Sanford and Son. And so I realized really quick when I was really, really little that I loved Sanford and Son. I can actually still remember the very first episode of Sanford and Son I ever watched. And if I'm not mistaken, I was probably 4 or something when I saw this, or 3 or something. I believe it's the episode where, if I'm remembering right, Lamont somehow is trying to learn a magic trick and he ends up getting handcuffed to someone. And I can't remember if he's handcuffed to a girlfriend or if he's handcuffed to Fred. But he ends up being handcuffed to someone and is desperately trying to get the keys. And maybe Rollo has to help him get the keys or something. I don't remember, but I just know that it blew my mind as a kid. I just thought, I think it was really the theme song. I think the theme song impressed me like a lot. Not that it's a song necessarily. The theme tune, we'll say. I think that's more appropriate to say. The theme music was just mind-blowing to me. Of course, I've always loved retro music, especially that kind of, any kind of synthy kind of 70s music like that. So, and even as a kid, I was that way. I really gravitated towards that type of music. So I was instantly sold on Sanford and Son thanks to its groovy opening tune. Now for the rest of this live stream, it's just going to be me doing the synthesizer noises from the beginning of the Sanford and Son intro. What is it? Wrong show! Wrong show! For the love of God, you're supposed to be putting together a Seinfeld set. Lord! I'm starting to feel like George's dad. There's got to be a better way. Oh man, this is great. So right now we're doing the monitor screen for the desktop computer that's in the home office. You can get a preview of the, yes, we're going there. The utter insanity that's going to be, in this set. But check it out. Vandalay Industries. So great references to the show. Oh man. I've been still trying to do the little X-Acto knife sticker placement, but you might have noticed the last few times I've tried it, it hasn't worked out that well. I thought that would be the way to go, and it's been failing me a little bit. I'm going to try it one more time, and what I've been doing is I've been looking at it on camera, like through the viewer on my phone, and that's probably not the best idea. I think I need to be looking at it with my actual eyes, like off camera. And monitors are bad because you're trying to get it equidistant, like all the way around, but you can't. It's hard to get that just right. It's really easy to mess that up. But you know what? I think that's good enough right there. You guys think that's good enough? I think it's good enough. I think it could be maybe slightly better, but I think, yeah, I can deal with that. That looks pretty good. Maybe I shouldn't give up on the X-Acto knife method because that was pretty sweet right there. That was nice. It was a perfect little placement, or as near perfect as I would consider to be perfect. And it didn't take long. So you know what? Not giving up on it. I think I just need to look at it with my actual eyes and not through the viewfinder here. That's a bad idea. Oh man, yeah. It reminds me of my computer in the late 90s. Had a nice Windows 98 PC. Good times. Had the internet going on that thing circa 2000, 2001. Good old dial-up internet. It was truly atrocious, the speed. But hey, it's all right. Nothing that if you emulated NES games or Super NES games couldn't fix, because that is one thing the computer was capable of doing. You could emulate those games. Oh, but Jared, does that mean you're supporting emulation? Does that mean you're saying, yep. When it comes to old games, go for it. I do not support emulating new games like Switch games and things, because some people are crazy enough to do that. And hey, you know, if you feel like that's the right way to go, hey, do your own thing, I guess. But no, I think old games, yeah, you should. I think that's a great way to preserve games, particularly arcade games, which I think that's going to be a problem. If there wasn't such a thing as emulation, then imagine the amount of old games that would just be lost. So you got to preserve it. They need to be available for the next generation. The vast majority of those games, no one is collecting any kind of royalty from. It would be different if you could go to the store right now and you could buy an electronic version of any old game you wanted. But that is not the way it works. There is no ability to buy 99% of the old games, particularly arcades, and they're never going to get to them all. So I think emulation is not only necessary, I think it's healthy. As long as you're talking about old games. You know, you get into these people who are emulating like Switch games. Yeah, that's highly dubious. But, you know, hey. Wouldn't it be hilarious for a SWAT team to burst in to someone's room over emulating like an NES game or something? I mean, it wouldn't be very funny if it really happened, but just the visual right now, I'm just like, you know, freeze! Are you playing Super Mario Brothers 3? You trash! Oh boy. Okay, so this was the supports we were building. To be honest with you, I had no idea what the little black legs were at first when I was building this. So that's cool. We're getting the little office nook going in there. There's the seat. Very nice. Okay. Yeah, I think that completes the little office nook, actually. And especially later on in the show, Jerry would always have, or was it Kramer? There was the bicycle hanging up always. Maybe it was Kramer. And so we're going to be adding that. And I have never really seen like this before, these spokes like this for a bicycle wheel. I don't have a set that has this, but I would say that there's a bunch of Lego City sets with bikes in it that probably include this. I probably just don't have it. Don't buy any of the Lego City stuff. It's just really not my like style of build. But maybe some of you all do. Maybe some of you all are big Lego City fans, and I would love to hear about that if you are, because maybe I'm missing out. Maybe Lego City is where it's at. Maybe that's like the more conservative way to build like an entire city display. Because I've always said that my problem was I don't have enough space to build like modular scale stuff and have like a giant Lego city. Maybe that's why Lego City is appealing, because they're really simplified little versions of everything. I just like my buildings to be detailed. It's hard for me to be like, you know, here's a little facade of one wall, and you know that's supposed to be a school in there, or that's a fire department. You just got to use your imagination. I've gotten spoiled, I think, by modern Lego sets, and I know how good they can look, and so I hate to feel like it's being dumbed down. And however, I think that Lego City is perfect for kids. I think that's the target audience, and it does big numbers for Lego. I think it's one of their top selling themes. It's no Star Wars or anything, but it's a top selling theme. All right, got the little green bicycle going here. And that just hangs up on the wall out here in the hallway. So, let me see. Almost forgot to add this. Just building up that hallway a little bit. I'm very impressed that there's an actual like hallway set up right here. Like, I really didn't expect it to go that far. I didn't think that that was a part of it. So that's really nice. Very unexpected though. Not something that I thought would actually be there. I know what I did wrong. So I was trying to figure out how the bike goes out here in the hallway, and it turned out I've hung the picture too low. The picture's supposed to hang up here, and I just put the studs, I attached the studs at the wrong spot. Then there's this. At first I thought it was a kickstand. That is the mount for the bike that goes on this little stud right here. So at first I confused myself, which is not very difficult to do. Trust me. There we go. Finally got it in there. So the bike can just stay mounted like this. All right, good to go on the bike. There's a lot of details in this set that are just what I would call, and I think this is a new genre of Lego piece that I'm going to describe here. I would call them stress-free detail additions. They're just fun little things that you add to it that it's not difficult to make or anything. The computer that we made a second ago, super easy to make, really simple little addition to the thing. You can't beat those kinds of just easy additions like that. So I'm very appreciative that those are a thing, that those are a part of it. Okay. All right. Oops, wrong piece up here. This needs one of the longer ones. Okay. And this goes over the door to complete the facade right there. I'm not really sure what the final height of the walls are. Maybe this is as high as they go. Maybe this is the last little bit that I'm doing, like right now. I would bet that this might be and that we're getting ready to seal it off, but you never know. There could be one more. Yeah, maybe it does go a little bit higher. But to me, this is plenty high enough for a minifig, like what we're doing right now. So that's good, anyway. These facade builds like this, where it's kind of, there's a room, but there's not an exterior. You know, you would think that it would be hard to mess something like that up, but there are a lot of ways that you could mess this up. If they don't budget out the right amount of pieces for the cost and everything, then you could end up with something that would be absolutely pitiful for minifigs, that the scale wouldn't work out right. And like I said in the last live stream, I don't mean to be picky about this set, but since it is just one apartment, I don't think that there should be a whole lot of compromises for this set. Like, I think that it ought to be pretty well exactly, you know, like a scaled little representation of Jerry's apartment. I don't think that there should be a whole bunch of shortcuts that we're going to take. And I think that it should end up, you know, capturing pretty well everything about it, because there's so little to it, you know, or at least what you see mostly in the show, there's so little to it. This isn't like a Full House Lego set. To be honest with you, I would buy it in a heartbeat. Could you imagine how cool the Full House would be on something like this? I mean, honestly, I think the biggest hurdle for getting it done, and I could be wrong, but I have a feeling the biggest hurdle would be the sheer amount of minifigs that Lego would have to budget into the house, because I really don't think you could get away with just doing, like, you know, 2 or 3 minifigures. It's non-negotiable that you would have to just do the entire family. And I would even go as far as to say that not only would you have to do the whole family, you would, I think, without question, you would have to do Kimmy Gibbler. Like, it's not even up for debate. But you know what? I actually think you may have to also do Steve, DJ's boyfriend. Like that. If you didn't do Steve, I think that would be a sticking point too. So you see, how many minifigs would that be like all together? Oh gosh, that would be a bunch. Maybe somebody can figure that out for me and put it in the chat, because that would be a lot. Especially if you like go for the later era of the show, where not only would it be Uncle Jesse, but you would have Becky there as well. And then are you going to include the twins with it? Like, gosh, it would just be a rabbit hole, a minifig rabbit hole. All right, definitely building up the height on these walls right here. I'm excited. I can just already imagine all the different displays that I'm going to do with this. I'll finally transcend my own sanity when I'm setting with this completed set, like on the coffee table in front of me while I'm watching reruns of Seinfeld. I think that's when they'll finally call, the asylum and ask me to be picked up. That may be the moment where it's like, he's literally playing with the Seinfeld apartment while he's watching the show. That should be the final part of the live stream, is see how long that the algorithm can pick up the audio from the show of me watching it and playing with the set in front of it before they cut my live stream and hit me with a copyright strike. Because I have a feeling that it wouldn't take long for YouTube spots to be like, oh, I can hear Seinfeld, get him. Then again, the amount of money that Netflix paid for Seinfeld, I'm not saying that it's completely, I'm not saying that it's completely unwarranted for them to be a little protective, because, they put some money into it. There we go. I'm curious about what all we're going to be putting on some of these little attachment points. I guess, different pictures and things. But like I said, I don't have it memorized about how the set actually looks, about where you put every little thing. That takes away so much of the fun. It's definitely even higher than I originally thought it was, because a minute ago I was declaring that that was the finished height, but nope. Turned out there was a little more. Oh, we're actually going to attach some door frame parts just that lead out to the hallway here. So that's nice. Oh, yeah. That really finishes that frame right there. I like that. That makes it feel so much more like a finished model and not just like a Lego representation of it. That's wonderful. All right. So we have a few pictures right here that we get to attach some decals to. I was watching, I've been watching some Canadian, I think it was a Canadian YouTuber. There's a whole bunch of Canadian and Australian YouTubers. And I was watching them, and they were talking about decals. And in America, at least that I know of, that to me is the only way I've ever heard that word pronounced. I don't know if you guys have heard it pronounced the other way, but it's always just been decals to me. Like, I've never even considered that there is any chance that there is an alternate pronunciation of that word. Well, it turned out I've been hearing some people say decals. Yeah. Am I crazy? Was I supposed to have heard decals before now? I just don't. Oh man, decals. All right. Got some Jerry's family right here. Oh, man. That's great. It's a shame we couldn't have got his minifig, right? I think that this works best when I just barely get like a corner of it on the end of the knife. And that means that I can see where all it's going to lay before I actually stick it on there. Maybe I should start a separate YouTube account, like a separate, whoops, I didn't have it on there enough. Maybe I should start a separate account where it's just about me trying to put stickers on things and complaining about how difficult it is to put stickers on things, and yet actively seeking out new projects that require me to put stickers on things, and then just complaining about it and to avoid, it seems reasonable. Oh yeah, I think that turned out pretty good. Leo. All right. Gotta get him up here and so he can watch over Jerry. Make sure that he's, managing his money well. Got the picture of the car right there. Oh, looking good. It's already starting to look so much more complete. Just even something as simple, as dirt simple as putting up a couple of pictures like that. Oh, we're actually turning it around and yeah, so they decided to do something fun with a wall that we typically we don't see this wall a lot in the show. Like it's one of those that just kind of, it's not an angle a lot of the time. So they decided that that is where we're going to put the beautiful portrait of Kramer from the show. Oh my gosh. This I think this is such a recognizable image. I've been seeing it on t-shirts lately, and it's just, they've done such an incredible job replicating this, like in minifig art. It almost makes you sorry that the minifig isn't wearing this, but then again, that's not like Kramer's key outfit, and I think the minifig is actually wearing the kind of more celebrated, like basic look of Kramer. And you definitely need vanilla like looks of characters if they're going to be as representative as you can get them. I think the one sticking point that I sort of have, and I think maybe some others have, is that Elaine changes so much throughout the show, like her hair and her style changes so much, that's kind of a sticking point about which Elaine do you go with. And no, I don't mean that she was played by two different people, because, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is, she's playing her through the whole show. But what I'm saying is there's 90s Elaine, like early 90s, late 80s Elaine from like Christmas Vacation and all of that, and I don't mean the character there, I mean the actress. And then there's late 90s Elaine, where she gets the more modern hairstyle, and they went with the more modern Elaine, and we'll talk more about that when it comes time to build that particular minifigure. Yeah, I gave up on the knife method for that one. I didn't want to mess up Kramer's portrait, so I just did it off camera. It'll be all right. Oh, what is it they say in that one? Look at him, he's a beast. I love it that he's like watching over them. And what's great is you could switch this out with any of these. So if you really wanted to, you could rearrange the pictures if you so desired, I think. So that's fun to have some level of customization, some level of options. All right, and I should have still kept it turned that way because we are building up the height right here. Looks like we need one of the long pieces. And we need one of the angles. I'm loving the height of the walls that they chose. They even went a couple of bricks higher than I would have gone, which I think is tremendous, because that, I would much rather there be a little bit more height because especially when you're doing photography on this kind of stuff, you hate for it to give itself away by showing the borders. Plus, and this is a funny thing to acknowledge, this isn't just built to be a realistic apartment. This is unashamedly supposed to be a TV set, which is, I think, exactly how they did the Friends sets, where there's like light rigging that we're going to build probably at the end on those and things like that. And this is supposed to be a TV set. It is not supposed to be a realistic, like, hey, what if this was real? No, that's for a real location. Like the Home Alone house is a perfect example, even though that's the most recent thing we built together on here. It's perfect example. That is a real actual house that right now is, I think my brother told me that it's an Airbnb. The latest owners, who I remember when they bought it in auction, that is how they've decided to monetize that property, which is brilliant, actually. Imagine how much money you could make as the owners of an Airbnb that is literally the Home Alone house, the McAllister home. Like, you would clean up. You would, I mean, whatever they paid for it, they got it for a steal, whatever they paid for it. You know what? We haven't really got a chance to look at this side, but you see, this is how it looks right now anyway from the outside of this air unit, and I just thought it was funny to see the windows opened up on one side. All right, yeah, we've got plenty of floor space there, so that's great. All right, we're now doing kind of the sealing off parts, or at least we're starting to seal it off with kind of parts on the top. And so for that, I'm going to be using some of these pieces. Let's go ahead and get this together. And that was the wrong gray. That's the trouble when they start putting different shades of gray pieces. It's very, very easy to get it all mixed up. Okay. And so this will help complete out the frame for Jerry's apartment door right here. So that goes there. And then we have a smaller one. It's going to connect to, I believe, across to Kramer's apartment here. You know, I have to wonder, if they do another Seinfeld set, will it just be Kramer's apartment? Because, I mean, think about it. Kramer's apartment isn't really seen until a little bit later in the show. At first, you do not see Kramer's apartment. But there is some absolute classic stuff about Kramer's apartment. My favorite thing about Kramer's apartment is near the end of the show, when the show gets really crazy, which is some of my favorite stuff. And Jerry's having to sleep at Kramer's apartment, but I guess that's when Kramer has there's a sign, a Kenny Rogers Roaster sign, right? The big red sign that's bathing his apartment in red light. And it starts to drive Jerry mad to the point where he thinks he's like seeing things running around in Kramer's apartment. To me, that is reason enough that I would buy that set. And you could have it be adjacent to this. Like it would attach. It would make it one gigantic set. And then at what point are we doing like, hey, it's the Jerry's apartment hallway set. It's a hallway. You know, we get part of the hallway here. The only part that you can actually see in the show. You know, it would be fascinating to think about being a creative on a show like this and knowing like that you only had certain angles, certain locations you could work with, and having to write around that. I mean, I'm sure it would be irritating, but in some ways, having confinements like that can sometimes breed a whole lot of creativity. So I kind of wonder if that wouldn't help. I think for me, it's almost good to have limits on ideas because it almost feels like it gives me a framework to use. All right, we have these little details on Jerry's walls here. There we go. Then we have another one off to the side. It's handled slightly differently. I can't remember if these are supposed to be like little light fixtures on the walls, or are they like crown molding details on the walls. I can't remember, but they're there in the show, like for sure. Okay. These things are just free standing on there, so you're always having to kind of twist them to the angle that you want. There we go. And now we're going to build up some of the, some more of that liner that we've been talking about. So over here, whoops, wrong one. Get some more of these going. We are almost through this bag, so it's amazing how quick the build is going. Like I said, I do anticipate that this will only be a 3-part thing, you know, unless I have to unexpectedly stop or something interrupts me. I could see us, you know, if everything works out, I could see us getting done with it tomorrow night. So it's wild. I think it's probably not the best idea if you're a Lego builder like me to continually only build these massive blowout sets that are 2,000, 3,000 pieces, because I think that has the ability to almost stigmatize your building experience to the point to where it feels like every time you build a set that it has to be this massive week-long experience, or you're like pushing yourself not to fall asleep, and you're trying to get it all done in, you know, 1 or 2 nights. You're trying to marathon it, and I am learning as I get a little older that that is not the way. So, all right, we have another decal to apply. We know another great reference to the show here. All the decals are references to the show, in case that wasn't completely obvious at this point. We know that Jerry's definitely quite the baseball fanatic, so go ahead and get it there. Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. Not too bad. There's a little bit of wiggle room with this because you can kind of press and slide it just a little bit to get it to that extra level. Yeah, I think that's decent. It could be worse for sure. It could be better. Slide it up a little bit. I should retitle my live streams to Obsessive Compulsive Man Attempts to Place Decals. All right, so that goes right over the computer right there. Excellent. By the way, that what we just did had its own page for some reason. Once again, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to why, like, the distribution of steps per page for Lego books. I think that all of Lego is this super well-oiled machine, you know, and everybody is so efficient. And then when it comes to, like, some of the stuff, like with the instruction manuals and some of the stuff with the stickers, that's the part where they're just like, you know what? Just put it out there. Because some of it, there's no rhyme or reason to what they do. But then again, I don't know. I guess the instructions and the sticker placement and all that, I guess that's the technical side of the deal. And I guess that's the thing that could, if anything, you know, could be confusing or misconstrued. I definitely think that that's the thing that could be. So maybe it's a little unfair for me to say, well, that's the part that's lacking. Well, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about either. Maybe I wouldn't be having too much fun if I was in their shoes. All right, let's see. I got that. Yep, got that done. Then we have some of these hinge pieces that kind of just reinforce. At least I think that's what we do. Oh, okay, I messed up right here. Yeah, this gotta, and then my handy dandy brick separator. Like I said, hadn't really had much use for a brick separator in a long time, but for some reason or another, there's so many pieces for this set that just end up being so flush and just like, that it ends up being something that I really needed. Oh, gee. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was $80. Maybe it was 80 or 90. I think it was 80 or 90. If I had access to Google, I would Google it real quick and see what it is on Amazon. I know that's whatever it says on Amazon or the Lego shop, that's what I paid for it because it was just regular old retail price. And it's not a bad deal because, what is it? It's 1,326 pieces. Maybe it's more expensive than $80 or $90. Maybe I'm crazy. 90. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's it. And that's well into, most Lego fans would agree that you're always hoping for every 10 cents you should get a brick. So that's well over that. You're getting, way more. So it's actually a really good value, even compared to Lego's in-house sets. I think the concern with a licensed set is you're always worried, is there like a huge upcharge for the license? And sometimes there is. Sometimes there's an upcharge for it being limited as well. Like the Monkey Kid sets, the first year of the Monkey Kid sets, most people would agree that even though they were brilliant, that a lot of them were overpriced, and that wasn't a licensed theme. But because it was a Chinese exclusive and all this, I think there was very few made for the American market. Which now, I don't think people really believed that at the time about Monkey Kid. I think everybody was just like, oh yeah, there's a ton of them. And I mean, without so much as a warning, they started disappearing from Wave 1. Not a lot of them. A lot of them just are still in production. But man, yeah. Yeah, I'd say licensing is a huge factor. And just to make a deal for the Seinfeld license for a product like this, I mean, it's got to be, I mean, what is it? Who owns Seinfeld? I'm not even sure. Is it Warner Brothers or something? Well, whoever owns it, they know what they've got. And when you look at how merchandised Seinfeld is, then, I mean, it's something that probably makes them money in a way that maybe it didn't even make money for them when it was actually on the air. When you think about the massive amount of merchandise, I'm convinced The Office hauls in more money for NBC now than it did from ad revenue back in the day. When you look at the massive amount of merchandise. And for a few years there for The Office, you couldn't find like Office merchandise that had Steve Carell's likeness on it. But that's all been cleared up because now every Office thing you find has Steve Carell's face like plastered all over it. For a while, you could only get stuff with Dwight on it, which was a funny thing. But now, that was the way it was back then. Oh man, yeah, it's an epic experience. And it being on Netflix really, I think, helps me want to rewatch it because it's just so easy to turn it on and I don't have to, like handle a disc. But the great thing about having the discs is that you have access to a lot of those special features and all of that. So that is something that makes those discs a very valuable thing to still have. But the experience of rewatching it has been tremendous for me so far. I'm several episodes into season 3 at this point, and I appreciate it more. Yeah, The Office probably is still my number one favorite show of all time, just because I think The Office got me through, like, I think college was one of the most stressful times of my life. I think for a lot of people, college is really, really, I don't know, maybe it's, still in season 1. And maybe college is like the fun part of their life, but for me, it was the extremely stressful part of my life. And during that time, that's when The Office was in full swing on NBC. And my wife and I, we knew that on Thursday nights, we had The Office to look forward to. And if we could just make it through our jobs that week and our college that week and all the stresses of just starting out as a young couple and trying to afford everything, and being just completely broke all the time, then we could watch The Office and it would make us happy. And what's even funnier is that I was watching it on like early days Hulu because we couldn't afford cable or anything like that, and we were trying to do anything we could to see it. And oh my gosh, some of my favorite TV memories are getting to watch The Office. I remember there were times when I had a schedule at school that it was to the point, to where I wasn't going to be able to watch it. And so while my wife would have one class, I would go to the like tech commons area and I would put on headphones and I would try to watch an episode that I wasn't going to get to see. Like I was going to try to watch it that way, like on a desktop in the computer lab. So that was it was a fun experience. But that's I'll say that was the yeah. It amazes me, and that's neat that you bring that up because I've always been like curious about that because I've always suspected that I would say The Office gained more fans after it ended than when it was actually going. And I don't think I even would have known about the show, but it just so happened Brandon, who's the other guy that you'll see on the channel, who's my best friend, he got me to sit down and watch episodes of The Office because he was telling me there's this show, it's the most incredible thing, and he had me sit down and watch some of it, and I was floored. And I could not believe it, how great it was. Some of the episodes that I was watching, because he'd gotten the DVD sets, and I was instantly just sold right away. I'll tell you, a lot of people, and I know that you're probably familiar with it too, they love the dinner party, the hour-long format episode dinner party, which is, probably one of the greatest TV episodes of all time. And the actual context surrounding that episode is just as interesting and good as the episode itself, because that was during the writer's strike, and there was no new TV on, and the writer's strike finally resolved itself. They finally reached a deal, the unions did. And so we were finally, all these shows were going to have new episodes. Well, it turned out that the Office writing staff during the writer's strike, even though they couldn't, submit any scripts during the strike, they were concocting, using all that time, all of their different ideas about what to do with The Office that season. Yeah. And it turned out that time to ruminate on what they were going to do resulted in an outpouring of ideas, because you have to imagine, these writers have been just knocking out episode after episode, hit after hit, and when given the chance to just kind of catch their breath for a second, it resulted in an amazing, unprecedented kind of comedy event with the dinner party. I think you could I really do believe NBC could successfully sell a bunch of tickets to to like a theatrical exhibition of the dinner party, maybe with one other episodes. I would buy a ticket to go watch like a Fathom event of that on the big screen. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. Michael talking about his plasma TV or his flat screen TV, the most pathetic television set you've ever seen. Him trying to sell the other employees on the candle company that Jan has got. I mean, it's unbelievable how funny it is. Yeah, fire drill. Oh my god. Oh my god, it's happening. Oh man, Stanley over there thinking he's having a heart attack, having the big one. was kind of freaked out the other day. Well, not the other day. It's been a little while back. When all of a sudden I was watching a Cheerios commercial and it was Stanley that was talking to the bee. Oh man, yeah, stress relief. Talking about his cholesterol or something, or bringing his cholesterol down. And I thought, good for you, Stanley. Get that money, son. Get it. I really should have taken the opportunity to meet. Oh yeah. I should have taken the opportunity to meet some of the office guys that have been around at some of the conventions that were a couple of hours away from me. I need to do that if they come back around. You kind of wonder with COVID if you'll get like a lot of those opportunities much, or is that going to be something that, you know, they're less active, like they're not showing up quite as much. You just wonder. Now, Elaine here, it's like I was saying earlier, what's great is that if you look, you have this metallic-y look to the pink right there on the shirt, which simulates that it's kind of like a silk. And that is perfect because that's exactly the kind of, I didn't attach her all the way. There we go. Because that's exactly the kind of material, you know, that she would be wearing with one of those like businessy kind of dress shirts. And that's the crazy part, is that they went to that extra little mile. Now, if they do Kramer's apartment, and that's a very big if, because I'm not sure if that's too out there, if that's too obscure or what. But if they do it, that's where I think they need to go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to bring in possibly early 90s Elaine minifigure. And she could wear, you know, the little frilly white thing over like the flowery dress or something like that. Because that's just as iconic as Elaine's like professional look that she has later in the show. And not only that, but you could also do some variants of the other guys on there too, because there's so many different looks for the characters. Heck, I would love to get Fireman Kramer. That would be incredible. Or Kramer, or Pimp Kramer. That would be awesome when he starts wearing the coat and people mistake him for the pimp. With the rainbow colors and everything. That would be incredible. I'm here for that all day long, if that's what they want to do. But you see, if it's Kramer's apartment, maybe that's the opportunity for them to do all sorts of different, like, alternative looks of Kramer, like all of his craziest, most iconic outfits. You could have Kramer dressed up as the Private Eye. You could have, man, there's so many different looks. You'd have Kramer as the host of the Merv Griffin show. That could be the side build. Okay, I'm on to something now. You could have the stage for the Merv Griffin show. That could be like the little, like here you have Jerry's little comedy nook, you know, at the comedy club. That's the side build here. And there you could easily say, oh, okay, well, you just have the recreated Merv Griffin stage. That would be fantastic if Lego ever hears this. Come on, Lego, help us out. Give us a little bit of joy with this potential Kramer set. I mean, you can only hope that that this set has performed well, and you know, and I hope it has. But I mean, let's be realistic. There's not much of a chance that it didn't perform well because, I mean, you know, Seinfeld's not exactly an unpopular show, so I have a feeling that I shouldn't be worried about Lego in this set. I'd say they cleaned up, if I had to guess. If I had to guess. All right. This is becoming quite the complex little build here. Okay. Add these. Starting to look like ketchup bottles. All right. Okay. I would also really like George's parents in Lego minifig form. I think Jerry Stiller is so iconic as George's dad that he could definitely, I think he would be worthy of his own minifig. Now, Jerry Stiller was a force of nature. Okay. Speaking of older people that were a force of nature, has Dick Van Dyke gotten a Lego minifig in any form? Because if he hasn't, Lego needs to make that happen somehow before that man passes away. Come on, Dick Van Dyke, man. Talking about a living legend. I can't believe that Dick Van Dyke is still with us. That's a gift. It's an absolute gift. All right. Looks like we're once again building a city skyline right here. It's an abstract mini build. No one knows what it is. All right. Let's see. I'm going to start pretending that I'm not using the instruction manual. And even though it's setting in my lab, I'm just going to pretend like that this is from memory. Or I should start telling people that this is me giving my own my own artistic interpretation of what I think that Jerry's apartment should look like in Lego. And it just so happens that it aligns, perfectly with exactly what the Lego designers did in the instruction manual. That's what I'm going to start saying. And, just hope that nobody looks into it very much and nobody questions it. It's a small channel. Won't be a scandal or anything. Look, I knocked Elaine over. I'm sorry, Elaine. That's why I gave her her angry eyes. Which is funny, I would use the angry eyes line from Toy Story 2. Because I believe that isn't Mrs. Potato Head, isn't she played by the lady that plays George's mom? I can't remember the actress's name, but she's hilarious. No, she was absolutely hilarious. All right. I don't know if the sales would be huge or anything for it, but I actually do think people would like a Cheers Lego set. But it's something that I don't think will ever happen. Because Lego has shown that they're finicky about doing anything related to alcohol. And for a Cheers set, I just don't think Lego would be willing to go for buildable bar. I just don't think they'd do it. And I'm not a fan of alcohol either, so I understand their reservations. But at the same time, it would just be so great to get Sam and Woody and Norm and Cliff, and it would just be so incredible. It's a shame that I would almost give that the probability of a Cheers Lego set happening is practically nothing. It's practically nothing. There's no way. I would expect a Moe's Tavern before we could get that. It's not going to happen. But that's okay. That's all right. Learn to appreciate, what we get. Oh, this is cool. Plugged right in. Right there in the side. Now we're going to add some pieces to it to kind of flesh this corner out a little bit. Hopefully everybody has kind of gotten back in the swing of things for their work or their school or whatever it is that they do for the new year. For me, that will happen tomorrow. Finally, time to get out of vacation mode, get back in the swing of things, make sure that I've not forgotten how to do my job. We'll see. Maybe I forgot. Who knows? Anything's possible. I'm going to defer to all the memes where It's like a character doing something random, and they're like, when that moment when you realize that you've forgotten how to do your job. All right, 3. And I believe we are starting on the kitchen area over here. So that's going to be great. I was always fascinated, especially as a kid, by Jerry's kitchen area. It's as slight of a kitchen as you can imagine, but it's pretty realistic for apartments I've been in. I mean, I've been in apartments that had less of a kitchen area than what Jerry's got, especially since he's supposed to be, right in the heart of New York City. I would imagine that space is a little limited. So don't think that don't think you got the luxury of a lot of room when you're in that situation. Okay. Right. Looks like we're building up something pretty high here. Yep. I believe that we're either building up part of the kitchen wall or we're building up part of the little bar or the shelving. Could be the shelving. I don't know. I guess we'll find out as we go. Oops. I don't go there. That goes there. The other night, I got to rewatch the episode about the crazy illegal cable guys. I think they're Russian. That Kramer gets Jerry to let into his house when Elaine is throwing that baby shower for George's. I think it's for, I can't remember who it's for, but it's one of her friends. The vaguely threatening Russian illegal cable guys. And the show did something there that it didn't, I don't know, it was kind of unusual, but I liked it. And it was, they did the whole, dream sequence of Jerry being shot by the FBI over trying to get illegal cable ran to his house. I mean, it was kind of weird to see them do it. It's still kind of weird. It's actually sort of violent for a sitcom, even though it's supposed to be a joke. Like, it kind of runs that gamut between, kind of like, that's a little strange. Of course, if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, then you'll know that Larry David, he does random stuff like that in Curb Your Enthusiasm. So it's not like it's unprecedented or anything, I suppose. As a matter of fact, the last episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm of the season had a big kind of dream sequence moment. But I don't want to spoil anything about how the latest season wrapped up, so I'll leave that to your own imagination. It was spectacular, I will say that. I still have some questions about the end of this latest season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but it was pretty great. I enjoyed it heartily. It's hard to believe Larry David, after all these years, is still so on top of his game. That's true talent. I don't think he's ever going to lose it. He's one of the funniest people alive. And it's just so funny for me to go back and watch Seinfeld through the lens of now having seen Curb Your Enthusiasm and understanding that George is just Larry David's, his hot takes on everything. And he's just, George is like his point of view character. I'll be honest, I'm surprised that Larry David, I guess it wasn't something that he planned on doing at the time, and maybe wasn't something he was comfortable with or something, but I'm kind of shocked that Larry David didn't just play George. Of course, there's an excellent joke about that in Curb Your Enthusiasm, where they're doing the fake Seinfeld reunion special, where Larry decides that he's going to play George. He's going to attempt to play George. because he says, "Oh, when I write George, he's just based on me." And so, I should be able to do this, no problem. And he tries it, and it's one of the weirdest things I think I've ever seen. It's only Jason Alexander should play George. Oh. One of the funniest things when it comes to old commercials on YouTube is to go back and look at those old like Jason Alexander commercials. He used to do, he still does quite a few commercials. He's still kind of a commercial guy. He was doing those KFC commercials quite a bit. But, there was a time when he was in his early 20s, mid 20s, when he was doing commercials like left and right. Jason Alexander was the king of commercials. And in particular, there's this commercial for McDonald's. I think it's for the, what was it? Maybe it's for the DLT. I think it was for the McDLT. And Jason Alexander is like dancing around singing this dramatic song about the DLT. And it's really surreal to go back and look at it. By the way, this is a refrigerator. You can actually see the little, the water and the ice dispensers right there in the front. This is really cool. I actually really like the way that they did this. The refrigerator in the Lego Home Alone set was one of the weaker parts of the build, I thought, because it was a little bizarre. It almost seemed more like I don't know, it almost seemed more like shelves or something. But maybe that's more just because that's the way the refrigerator was in the movie. But this is much more what I have in mind. Now, we have an excellent little reference here. And what's great is, because it's Lego, I guess everything is smoothed over for Superman and, it's Warner Brothers and all that. Because, they're doing DC sets all the time. But we can get Superman in there, and it says yada for the famous line in the show. And for those that aren't aware, Jerry is a massive Superman fan. And in the show, if you look in Jerry's apartment, there's always a like Superman statue, or at least later on, there's a great Superman statue that's like back there. So it's great that Superman can actually be in it. And there's an even more concrete reference to the Superman statue later on in this set. I do know about that, but I don't want to give it away, because I think that might be pretty enjoyable for us to talk about when we get to it. Now, this is really cool. You have a smattering of stickers here and all sorts of just terrific references to the show. But by far, my favorite one is, do we recognize this fella right here? Do we know him? That's Larry David. For as much as I would love a Larry David minifig, I'm pretty happy that he at least got like representation in this set, because that's kind of a big deal to me. Larry David's one of my favorite performers alive. So for him to make an appearance in this Lego set is beyond like a big deal for me. Like the day that they announce a Curb Your Enthusiasm Lego set is the day that I never ask for anything from Lego ever again. Except I will. But still. Okay, I got it on there pretty good. These long stickers are kind of irritating, but I got it on there all right. Yeah, that's decent. That's decent. I like it. I couldn't disrespect Larry by misapplying the sticker. That would have been a real shame. All right. We have some stickers for the side here. We have the we have a little cow oven mitt right here hanging off. At least that's what it looks like. All right. And these are kind of, I like to call these willy-nilly sticker placements for Lego. They just show you like generally, they're like, yeah, I'll put it something like this. Yeah, good luck. And you just kind of put it in an angle and you call it a day. I kind of love that because you don't have to have it equidistant and straight and all this. But at the same time, it's also a little maddening because there's no, maybe you're going to mess it up, maybe. And here is the cat to go with it. So you get the cow and the cat, which, are in the show. All right, that just goes like down below it. And like I said, there's no like real strict, you're just supposed to kind of put it like it's dangling, you know, like it's just hanging off of like a hook. And so you're just kind of putting them at little angles. Oh yeah, so we have a beautiful refrigerator now. Okay, all right. Well, this answers my question about exactly what part we were building. This is like the back wall leading up to those little cabinets that are always above Jerry's kitchen. And then this will build out like the front of it here in a second. Okay. All right, that makes a little more sense now. It's funny because, you know, you have a mental image of these famous TV rooms. And when you're building something like this, you're trying to reconcile like your mental image with where everything should be with somebody else's interpretation of where everything kind of has to be for logistical purposes. And for a Lego set, it's all about space management. It's all about, you know, how everything is going to get laid out and how many studs you're going to need. To me, I mean, and I'm sure that the people at Lego, that they live for that kind of thing. For me, that would be the absolute most miserable part of the job, is sitting down with grid paper, which they have to do, you know, or at least in a program, and trying to figure out the logistics of just how big everything is and how you're going to fit it all together, and how's that going to cost out? Do you need to cut this because of the costing? And apparently, used to, Lego was run very, very differently. And things like that weren't very well, like at least the costing part and everything. Things like that, at least according to inside sources, weren't considered in like the early 90s and the late 80s. That wasn't really like a part of how they ran their business, and they almost ran it into the ground. They were, you know, they didn't really have like a solid figure for how much they should be charging for some sets, and for some sets they were undercharging, and maybe some were overcharging, and it almost cost them the whole company because it just financially it wasn't being run with the kind of capitalist efficiency, I think, that we see for a lot of Western companies. And for Lego to be a little European import, a little European export, I guess I should say, then it's, you know, I guess there was a little bit of growing pains with it becoming this worldwide, like global corporate superpower. Man, this is an attractive little microwave. Look at that. It's cool. These little appliance builds, crazy over little appliance builds. I just, every set you're going to see them do something different, and it always just thrills me to no end. That is a 90s microwave, if I've ever seen one in my life. In my life. All right, we're getting the sink going now. You see, this is the fun part of the build that I was talking about on our last live stream. This is the part that engages me completely, where it's like, you know, this is what you want right here. I'm in it for the mini builds. I'm in it for the little details and little flourishes that you build, and the fan service. This is going on, I mean, it's firing on all cylinders. And because there's no exterior to worry about, which it would just be, you know, it would be practically impossible to make an exterior work because they're showing an exterior shot of something that isn't the actual building, and you would be having to try to make it work. Because there's none of that to worry about, it's just purely the part of the build experience that I like. Sure, it wasn't fun putting together the floor, you know, just having to get those little fake wood panels to be exactly in the right spots. That wasn't fun. Not very fun, anyway. But this part's fun. Doing like sinks and doing, you know, dishwashers and things. And I mean, that's the cool part. Oh yeah, that looks great. Loving how the little kitchen nook is coming together. And I believe that we're building like the range now, like the oven, the stove, and all that. So, and I'm glad that this wasn't skimped over. Like, and I'll tell you what, it's starting to sound like I'm being critical of the Lego Home Alone set, and that's not at all. That was a different style of build that was meant to be like, you know, how many tiny little details can we cram into this massive model? It is a different style of set. So you would get to something like the kitchen, and I would say that the kitchen had to be cut back to the utmost in the Home Alone house, because in the actual movie, the kitchen is kind of expansive. You know, there's a lot going on with the kitchen in the actual movie if you pay attention. But they really couldn't represent a whole lot of that. Like, a whole lot of that had to go for the Lego set. And like I said, I didn't expect to see those kinds of cuts with this set. And I have to say, I'm happy to say that I'm not seeing those kinds of cuts, that those kinds of cuts aren't being made. This is as good a representation at this scale as you can possibly get, in my opinion, for this little kitchen. I don't feel like anything's being compromised. It's all exactly the size it needs to be. It's exactly the placement. Yeah, there shouldn't be compromises. I mean, let's be real. There shouldn't be compromises. This is just a singular apartment. It should be exactly what it's supposed to be. There shouldn't be a bunch of kind of, you know, wiggling back and forth on if they're going to go for it or not. It's, you know, either you're going to do it or you're not with something like this. It would have been a horrible shame if they would have just done like a half-hearted, like $40 version of the set. That would have been, I think, the greatest tragedy. If they would have been like, oh, we don't know if, you know, many people's willing to pay $90 or $100 for a Seinfeld set, so we're just going to play it safe. We're going to give them, you know, here's the couch, and here's maybe a little part of a wall, and, you know, good luck. Use your imagination. That would have been horrible. I mean, I probably, as long as I would have got minifigs, I would have been like, yeah, sure, why not? But it just would have been boring. It's hard for me to believe that I'm living in a time where there's actually a official Seinfeld Lego set. It's really crazy. It's really crazy. However, I'm also old enough to tell you that I lived in a time without Star Wars Lego sets, and that I was constantly irritated that they didn't exist, because I wasn't like massively into Lego as a kid, believe it or not. But I always said, and I remember I said it all the time, I'm like, if they would just do some Star Wars sets, you know, then I would get into it. That was supposed to be my gateway toy. And sure enough, it kind of was. Because when I wasn't begging for action figures with every scrap of expendable money, then that's what I was, you know, I would get some little Star Wars Lego sets. And those ended up being my first real deal Lego sets. But I remember when they didn't exist. And then when they suddenly did, that was revolutionary. And I remember at the time thinking that they were just so expensive. Which, you know, looking back, they probably were, when adjusted for inflation, still like really, really super expensive. But probably looking back, they were a super good deal. Super good deal. If I had to guess. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm reminiscing too hard about Lego Star Wars. I do remember the Lego magazine coming into real prominence at that time and realizing that I could get a free subscription to it. And so I think part of my Lego experience was just looking through those magazines. Mostly just looking at the Star Wars stuff, if I'm being 100% honest. Like, that was mostly what it was for me. But at the same time, you know, the other stuff was really catching my eye. But I'll also be the first to admit, and I'm not too cool to admit this, that I remember that I didn't like Bionicle at all. I thought that the designs just didn't do it for me. It just was. It wasn't what I wanted at all. And I know that there's a lot of hardcore fans of Bionicle out there, and God bless them, because as I got older, I really started to appreciate Bionicle for what it was. And I have a feeling that if they were to ever reintroduce Bionicle, they tried it once and it didn't work out, you know, which is really sad for those excellent, dedicated fans of Bionicle. If they were to reintroduce it now with the modern build technologies they have available to them, I could see myself falling into that really hard. Because looking back, I don't know what it was that wasn't clicking for me, but it just wasn't. I think that would be a totally different story now. Honestly, I think part of it was just the I think I wanted it not to just be the colored plastic. I wanted them to have the painted details. And of course, now that we've seen modern Lego, we know just how detailed and dual molding and all this side printing and all of this. Now the detail, that's not even a question. The detail will be through the roof if they ever did something like that. So I could see myself falling hard into Bionicle if they were to do it. Were any of you all Bionicle fans? I mean, the only Bionicle I had was, I think there was like a Happy Meal promotion. And I ended up with some of the Bionicle toys like that way from the Happy Meal promotion. But I wasn't a Bionicle kid, so just wasn't my thing. Sorry about that. Yeah, I wasn't super into Bionicle. Not that I didn't think it looked interesting, but it just wasn't visually. I don't think it was my thing. I do remember being intrigued by the packaging. I think it was something I don't think that anybody had ever really seen before, because they each came in their own like little bunkers, their own little shells. And I was talking to my friend Adam about that the other day, how he remembered having the container that they came in. And I do have one of those somewhere or another. I think Mom might have found it at a thrift store or something. So I thought, yeah, that's pretty neat. All right. So I guess this is, yeah, okay. This is the oven that we're working on right now. Oh, this is a fun idea. I think that this is like a bumper or a fender, like or like a something that would go like on the front of an ATV. You see, you just put it over it, and then we're gonna put some little burners, and little things on there, and you're suddenly you've got a range, you've got an oven. So that's pretty cool. Can't beat that. I might have to go back later and readjust these to make them a little more straight. But for now, they're good. I believe this is supposed to be a cupcake setting here, maybe. Maybe it's a muffin with the top eaten off of it. If you know, you know. It would need to be in a big trash bag though, full of muffins without the tops. We have a tea kettle right here. Another little fun detail. Looks kind of like Mrs. Potts from Beauty and the Beast right there. We have a coffee mug. Love those tiny little details. That's what makes the set to me. That's what makes it come alive. Looks like a cutting board over there with a little tan piece. Yep, that is our whole little bar section that we always see facing this way in the show. And those connect to these two little points here and this point over here. So that's going to go right there. That's going to go right there. Do I have that right? Nope, I'm wrong. That doesn't connect there. Oops. Okay. That connects over here, I think. There we go. That connects on the side like that. Then we're supposed to build up a little wall extension right here. So get that in, and that in. Oops. There we go. Put it the wrong way. There we go. All right, and we have our little extension to kind of complete out this look. All right. And only a few scant pieces left. We are doing the bar stools now from that part of the kitchen. We're doing 2 of them. And like I said, completely fascinated by the myriad ways that Lego comes up with to do chairs and stools, and there's just a ton of different ways that they do this. I actually really like this because these seem a lot more sturdy than some of the other methods. Yeah, you see, I think that's going to last right there. I don't think that's begging to come apart like some of these chair designs that I see. See, I threw it down and it still wouldn't break apart. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. All right, got that all together. And that's what these 2 little connection points were for, was for the bar stools. I should have known. I should have known. There we go. And 1 on each. Now the bar stools aren't going to go flying across the floor every little moment. So that's nice. I do like that. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So that was it for bag number 5. That means we've only got bags 6, 7, 8, and 9 to go. So only 4 more bags to go. I got started a little later than I wanted to on this. So I guess we'll continue tomorrow night and we'll just keep going for it. You never know, we may power through and actually get done tomorrow night. I think so far it's looking really nice, and it's amazing, especially if you look at the thumbnail for this video. The kinds of progress that we made in just one night is pretty crazy. So with just a few bags, just a couple of bags, we were able to get to just a little bit more complete of a look, I think. And now we have 3 of the principal cast, so we just need George and Newman, and that's it for the minifigs. Of course, I want to thank all the folks that watched tonight. Tomorrow night, hopefully we'll get a couple more bags done. And of course, I want to wish you all well, and God bless each and every one of you. Y'all have a great night. And as always, I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.